Welcome to another episode of libGDX-Graph devlog. In this episode, I'll show you a cool effect or a family of effects that you can use that are a bit more advanced, and they are using the depth buffer and depth function in rendering, and using the graph shader, you can achieve these effects very quickly, very easily. So as you can see in here, I have a scene in which I have a starship, a robot in front of the starship, and also another robot running around the starship. So what happens here if this running robot gets behind the starship, it's very difficult to locate on the screen. Player might not be able to see where it is. In some games, it might be beneficial for the player to know where things are. For example, let's say these are my worker robots that I command to do stuff, and if I don't see where the robot is, I might not be able to click them or select them or see what they are doing. And it's good to give feedback to the user where the robots or that he commands are. So this is done using this graph here under pipeline. I have objects that are tagged with the environment tag, and this is in this case the starship, and seen through, which is the objects that have to be locatable by the user. So they have to render. User has to be aware where they are at all times, regardless if they are hidden by some other objects or not. So let's start with a simple change. We can modify the seen through and specify that the depth is always, which means that it's going to be always rendered rather than only when it's in front of other objects. So as you can see now, when this robot runs behind apart from the artifacts on the robot itself, when it runs behind, quote unquote, the starship, you still see it in front of it. So that's not exactly what we want to do. We want to also make sure that user understands that that the robot is behind this starship, not on top of it. For example, when it's somewhere here, it looks like it's on top, but that's not what we have here. So this is not no-go, not what we want. So let's get back to what it was and reload. So now we have back to where we started. So what we can do instead is specify that we want to render it only if it's greater. So if it's in front of the other geometry. So first of all, the robots disappear immediately. That's because they are not in front of anything. And also, so it's only visible when, as you can see here, it's on rendered only on top of the starship if the robot is behind the starship or the geometry. So that's not exactly what you want as well, but it's pretty close. So what we might want to do is now render it second time, this time in front of it, and then define that this is going to be rendered differently. So let's maybe start with making sure that it's rendered differently. So instead of texture, let's use maybe a fresnel effect. I think this is pretty cool effect that you can specify. Then you can highlight that something is there, just make it very obvious that this is rendered differently than the actual normal geometry of the normal colors of the object. So let's start with fresnel effect. But as you can see, it requires a normal and a view direction. And view direction in this case is it's a difference between the camera position, so provided camera position, and the position of the fragment, so the pixel that we are rendering. And we can specify also a power. So I'll show you what does it output. And we want to make this into, so this output is a float. So what I want to do is convert it into a monochromatic, so black and white color here. Okay, so what fresnel effect does is it produces output of 1 on the edges of the objects, and as you go towards the center, the output is turning to 0. And the way it does it is basically does a dot product between these two vectors, and then does some additional modification with the power here. You can change the power here. The larger it is, the larger the surface is, and the smaller and the larger it is, the thinner the outline of the object is. I think I'll go with like a 2 in here. So now if I save it and reload, okay, I'll have to now wait until the robot gets behind the object, behind the starship, and well, yeah, we are seeing something that we want to see already. That's pretty cool. Let's maybe do additive rather than normal blending, which means that it's going to be drawn adding highlights to the output. And also we can specify alpha here. Let's say 0.6 and make sure we are drawing transparent. Okay, we're seeing like sort of a ghosty outline of the robot when it's behind, but we still have to fix it. To make sure that it's drawing when it's in front of objects. So let's start off maybe with adding another shader here using the same tag. And what I'll do here is just render the diffuse texture to the output. So sampler to the, and in here I'll be using the default settings for the depth test and transparency opaque. Okay, all right, save, reload. Okay, we are almost there. The only problem is that, as you can see, if the robot is in front, let's wait for a moment until it comes back. So you can see the outlines here being drawn in some cases. That's because, for example, the arm is in front of the body, so the body draws using this ghost kind of look, and that's not what we want. So the reason for this happening is because if this is drawn in one render pass, then the opaque objects, so both the environments and the normal color of the robot is drawn first, and only after that transparent or translucent objects are being drawn, which is this other shader that produces ghost effect. So what it means that since at the time when we are drawing the ghost effect, already the robot, original robot is already drawn, the color one. Therefore, any parts of the body that are obscured by the robot itself will be rendered additional time with the ghost effect. The same is true also for if you have these two robots and one gets in front of the other. If you take a look, the other robot will be also drawn with the ghost outline, which is the reason why I put this robot here. Yeah, it's pretty quick, but yeah, so you can trust me that it's being drawn. So how we fix that is basically what we want to do is first we want to draw the environment. Second, we want to draw the ghost effect of the robot. And only after that we want to draw the actual robot, the color part. So what we can do is, I think this is the color one, yeah. So we take the color one and we move it to a new render pass, which is going to be, this is going to be drawn first, and then we will draw the other one. So at the moment there is no way of copying a shader, something that's probably I'll be adding later. So let's quickly do the same thing. Material, diffuse texture, attribute, UV attribute, sampler, sampler, texture, and color output. And now we save it, we reload. Immediately we see we don't have this problem of torso being rendered with the ghost when the robot is close to us, because we are drawing the color of the robots, of the object that has to be seen through. We draw them at the end after we draw the ghost, and the ghost is only drawn on top of the objects that are rendered in the environment with the environment shader or anything else inside of this render pass. So this could be a very good end of this, but there's more you can do with this. So it's up to you how you would want to render this outline. So for example, you can take I don't know, let's say rather than have specified alpha, you can take a provided coordinate, which is the coordinate of the screen, x, y, and z. We'll split this. So this is the coordinate on the pixel of the screen. So this is in screen coordinates. We'll take y, we'll put it through a sine function, and we use this as the alpha. Alpha. So we'll have this kind of effect here. Of course, sine is between -1 and 1, so I will remap it. From -1 to 1. And from 0, remap it to 0 to 1, and use this as an alpha, and we have a bit better stuff. So let's save it, reload, wait a moment until it goes behind the starship, and we'll see that it's not only this ghost effect, but it's like lines. There will be like kind of sort of lines based on the screen coordinates, not the object, not the world coordinates, but the screen coordinates. Yeah, I think that's so. Basically, in this render pipeline, I'm drawing environment first, then I draw the ghost outline, or whatever other way you want to draw the important models that you want to have user being able to see, even if they are behind some geometry. You draw them in the scene through the way you want it, just as long as you specify the depth that is greater, which means that this is going to be rendering only if the model is behind what is already rendered. You have to make sure that you also set here transparent. This ensures that this is run after this. If you wanted to use opaque geometry, you just move this part to another render pass. So you'll have environment render pass, the ghost render pass, let's call it, and the main color for the important objects render pass. So yeah, you can get a pretty cool effect, and really quickly. It would take you probably quite a while to figure out and do it yourself inside of a program. You can easily move your objects between these different tags by just specifying a tag. Okay, I hope you find this useful. If so, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel to be notified of any new videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.